All right, so today our objective is that we're going to know our parts of an expression and that we can combine our like terms. This will come in handy, especially when we get to our equations, because these smaller parts are just a small portion of what we will be doing when we get to our equations. All right, so let's get into it. So our parts of an expression, I added in a variable. Because if you don't know what a variable is, it's going to be really hard to determine what a variable term is. So a variable is a letter that takes the place or acts as a placeholder to represent an unknown number. So our variable terms are just our terms that have a variable in them. So we have 14x, we have negative 2x, and we have negative 5x. And in this case, our variable itself is x because the letter is x, and that's taking the place of a number that we do not know. So that represents 14 times the number, negative 2 times the number, and negative 5 times that same number. So our variable terms are going to be our 14, negative 14x, because it's the ones with the variable, negative 2x, and negative 5x. Now, our variable terms and our coefficients go hand in hand. That number attached to our variable is our coefficient. So our variable term, when we're talking about that, you're showing the whole part there, the number that's being multiplied by that variable. The coefficient is just that number attached to it. So you take all those variable terms and you would drop the variable. The number that is attached or being multiplied by that variable. So 14, negative 2, and negative 5 are going to be our coefficients. Our constants are going to be your regular numbers that are not attached to a variable. So our constants, and let me leave that red. So these are our variable terms. And then if we wanted to go a step further, these were our coefficients for these parts. And then, let me switch our colors one more time. Our constant terms are those terms that do not have a variable attached. So we've got 9, 8, and 1. All right, so now if you didn't already, and I should have said this at the beginning, if you are still copying this, go ahead and pause this and copy it. I should have said it in the beginning, but again, as always, these guided notes are on Schoology right under the video. So if you want to go ahead, because you haven't already, you can go and print these guided notes out so that you don't have to write anything. Otherwise, go ahead, pause this, write this down, and I'm going to move on to some examples of that. So I'm going to do a couple with you, and then I'm going to let you guys pause and do them on your own. So number one, so our directions are to identify our variable terms, our constant terms, and our coefficients. So, and we all know, we just went over them. Variable terms are the ones with the variables. The coefficients are the numbers attached to those within those variable terms, and our constants are just our regular numbers. So, our variable terms in number one. Well, what ones do we have with a letter attached to them? We have 11a. So 11a. And we have 4a. And I do not know. I wish they put variable term and coefficient together, but they didn't. Well, I'm going to jump to coefficient first. Our coefficients are those numbers in that variable term attached to our variable. So our coefficients are going to be 11 and 4. And looking at this, I have no numbers that are not attached to a variable. So, for our constant term, you can put a slash through it, or I'm going to put NA, not applicable, because we have just plain old numbers not attached to a variable. Let's do another one. Looking at 2, I have a variable of x I'm seeing in here. I have a 3x. And a 7x. So those are going to be our two variable terms because those are our two terms, and our terms are separated by those pluses and minuses. Our variable terms are going to be those two ones with a variable attached, so 3x and 7x. And I'm going to jump to our coefficient. Our coefficient is the number within that variable term. So our coefficient is going to be 3 and 7. And then our constant terms are going to be the ones that have no variable attached. So I have a -4 because we know with a -4, and I should have said that earlier. We know this though, with a -4, we would say plus a negative. That's a -4. So -4 has no variable attached, and +6 has no variable attached. All right, I'm going to do one more, and then I'm going to have you do a couple on your own. So again, on number 3, I'm seeing M in there. So our letter is taking the place of a number. The M is going to be our variable. So our variable terms are going to be those ones with that variable of M in them. So I see that I have -12M. And I see that I have 4M. And those are my only two that have a variable in them. And then our coefficients, again, are those numbers attached to our variables. So that -12 attached to our M is a coefficient. And that +4 attached to our M is a coefficient. And then our constants are going to be those numbers that have no variables attached. And again, I have -3, which is plus a negative. So we have -3. We have +16 not attached to a variable. So 16. Let me do one more. And then I'll let you do the last couple by yourself. And then I'll go through them so you can check and see if you did it right. All right, so I have 6k minus 4 plus k minus 2. So I have 6k and I have k. This one's a really good one to show you because, well, we know that k is our variable. And we know that those are going to be our variable terms. So I have 6k and I have k. And we know that if there is no number in front of a k, there's an assumed what there? Well, if you think about it this way, and some of you are right, if you did not get it, let me explain it a little bit further. Think about it this way. When we see a number in it, it's showing an increase. We know that if we have at least that k there, the second we put 2 there, it shows that I have 2. So there's an assumed 1 there. So we know we have 6k. And we know that we have 1k, or you could put just k. But then when I go to put our coefficients, I need to know what number is attached to that variable. So my coefficients are going to be 6k, so the 6, not the k. And I needed to know, well, there's an assumed 1 there, so 6 and 1. And then we are left with -4 is plus negative. So then I am left with a -4 because that's not attached to a variable, and a -2. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tell you now to go ahead and pause this and do 5 through 10. And when you're done, you can go ahead and unpause it. So this should be a good time to pause it. All right. So at this point, you've paused it. You've worked through them out, and if you haven't, go ahead and pause now. All right. So I've given you more than enough chance to pause it and work through them. So let's go through them because at this point you've paused it, done it, and unpaused it, and you're ready to go. So we're rocking and we're rolling. So we have -5 because plus a negative and -2p plus a negative. So you should have said that your variable terms were that -5p. Make sure you included that -5. So you put 5p. That was not enough. And then you have -2p. And again, make sure you put that included that negative. And then we should have said that those coefficients or those numbers attached to our variables were our -5 or -2. And then looking at it, what numbers did you say that were not attached to a variable? It should have been 3 and 13. So we did 3, we did 13, we got that -5 and that -2. Did you get it right? Was it, if you got it wrong, was it because you didn't include the negative? If you got it wrong and you don't know what you did, write it down, make yourself a note, come to class, come with it prepared. All right, let's look at the next one. I have negative 10r minus 6r plus 11. Well, this is an r, this is an r, and this is an r, so those are going to be our variable terms. We know that it's negative 10r. We already determined that negative r, there's an assumed 1 there, so we have negative 1r. And then we have a negative 6r. That one is important because now we're going to jump to our coefficients. And with those coefficients, it's the number attached. And when there's no number there, I have to know what number is there. So I have a negative 10 attached to my r. We had nothing attached to that second one, and we already decided and learned, if we didn't already know, there's an assumed 1 there, but there was a minus in front, so it's an assumed negative 1. And then negative 6. And again, because plus a negative, plus a negative, plus a negative. So those are all negative. Then, what do we have left? We have a positive 11 to be our constant. All right, let's look at 7. So I have plus negative. I have negative 5n. N is our variable. Negative 5n is our variable term. And then we know that negative 5 is that number attached to our variable, so that is our coefficient. And what are we left with? Well, I have positive 19. I have plus a negative, so negative 8. And positive 14. Did you get that right? If not, did you not include your negative numbers? If it wasn't something like that, make sure you write it down, bring it to our small group. All right, let's look at 8. I have negative 2 and positive 13. Those are my only two y's that I see in there, or any letters. So we know it's going to be 13, and then this is plus a negative. So 13y and negative 2y. Our coefficients are going to be those numbers attached, so 13 and negative 2. And anything we have left that's not attached to a variable is going to be our constant. So I have negative 5 and 18. Again, did you get it right? You got it wrong. Did you not include your negatives? If it's something else, bring that question again and again. I know I keep saying it, but I want to make sure we fix any issues we're having. This time I see 2 variables, but those are still going to be our variable terms. I see an 8a plus a negative. I see a negative 7b. So I see a and b, but even though there's different variables, those are still variable terms because they're still attached to a variable. They're just going to represent 2 different numbers. So I have 8a. I have negative 7b. I have plus a negative, so negative 2b. And I have positive 3a. And again, even though we had 2 different variables, those coefficients are still going to be just those numbers attached. So 8, negative 7, negative 2, and positive 3. And then our constant are just going to be whatever I have left that does not have a variable attached. And in this case, it is just 1. All right, last one. I see 11 has an x attached. I see this plus a negative 4y has a variable, and positive 2x. So I have 11x. I have negative 4y. And I have 2x. And again, our coefficients are those numbers attached to variables. So our 11, our negative 4, and our 2, and then our constant is anything I have left that does not have a variable. So all we are left with is an 8. I know you guys rocked it. If you didn't, I hope you see where you went wrong. If you do not see where you went wrong, circle it, star it, bring it to our guided practice. We'll go through it together. All right. So now we're going to talk about combining like terms. You can simplify an algebraic expression by combining like terms. This means to combine common variable terms and constant terms. Example, we're going to simplify this below. So I can combine variable terms as long as they have the same variable. And the way I like to explain this, I came up with it on the spot last year. but my kids like to play with Play-Doh. And I tell you guys that you cannot mix your Play-Doh colors. It's just wrong. And so that's like combining your like terms. You can only combine the terms that have matching variables. In this example they've given us, we only have the variable x, but like we saw on the last page, we may have times where we have more than one variable. But I see a 14x, again plus a negative. I see a negative 2x, and again plus a negative. I see a negative 5x. So I have 14x, I have negative 2x, and I have negative 5x. Those seem to be all my terms that have an x in them. Well, 14 minus 2 is 12, minus 5 is 7. And keep the x. So you treat those the coefficients, the same as you would if it was 14, negative 2, and 5, but you keep that x attached. So I have 7x. And then once we eliminate those, let's see what we're left with. I have 9, I have 8, and I have 1. 9, I'm just going to say 9 and 1 is 10, plus 8 is 18. So plus 18. You could have said 9 and 8 is 17, plus 1 is 18. But I just know it's cleaner when I put my 9 and 1 to make 10. So let's look at a couple of examples for that. All right, so let's simplify some expressions. Again, we can combine our variable terms. We can combine our constants, and we can only combine our variable terms if they have the same variable. So I have a positive 4x and a positive 7x. Keep the x. We know 4 plus 7 is 11, so I'm going to be left with 11x. On this next one, I have k minus 6x. So again, plus a negative, and then it's just like regular. We know there's an assumed 1. So I have a positive 1 and a negative 6. Think back to our integer rules. Positive and negative, we're going to subtract and keep the bigger sign. So 6 minus 1 is 5. Keep the k, and negative 6 is bigger than positive 1, so negative 5k. All right, so down here, we can combine these c variable terms. And 1, there are no other constants, so 1 plus, because that's how we're separating our terms. And then 6 and 11 give us 17. C. All right, again, down here, I only see one variable term. And again, plus a negative, so negative 2y, and you put plus a negative. I like to put plus and negative all in one go just so I don't lose it. That may help you so you're not losing signs. All right, and then I have positive 7 and positive 12. 7 plus 12 is 19, so plus 19. These terms are always going to be separated by plus or minus. I would leave them all as plus and negative just so that you know where those signs go and they don't get lost. All right, so now I have 11m minus 5m minus 13. So I'm going to do my plus and negative, so I don't lose my signs. So I know 11m plus negative 5m. Well, again, a positive and a negative, subtract and keep the bigger sign. 11 minus 5 is 6. Positive 11 is bigger, so your 6 is 6. Don't lose your m is going to stay positive. And then you have negative 13 and no other no other constants. So you can put minus 13, but I'm going to put plus a negative 13 just that I know that sign is attached to the 13. All right, let's do, I'm going to finish at this page, and then I got a couple examples I'm going to let you do. So I have a negative 16 plus a negative. Plus a negative. So I have negative 6 and I have negative 16 and a positive 8a. So I know I can't combine the 8a with anything because there's just the one variable term. And then I have a negative 6 and a negative 16. Well, I have two negatives. So if I spend $16 and then I spend 6 more, I'm losing all of that money. So there's no positive negatives. We're just going to add them together and make it bigger negative. So negative 6 and negative 16 is going to give me plus a negative 22. Again, pick out our variable terms. And I see that I only have one constant of positive 7. So I'm going to cross that out. Now looking at my variable terms, plus a negative, so I don't forget. Negative 3v plus negative v plus 9v. And we know that negative v has an assumed 1 there. So negative 3 and negative 1, 2 negatives make a bigger negative. So then I have negative 4v plus 9v, positive and a negative. 9 minus 4 is 5. Positive 9 is bigger, so plus 5v. All right, so now let's look again. I have a negative 2n and a negative 3n. So negative 2 and negative 3 are going to give me negative 5 plus a negative plus a negative. 2 negatives make a bigger negative. And then I have negative 19 because plus a negative. So negative 19 and positive 4 is going to give me negative 15. All right, let's look at this last couple examples. And I'm going to do 24 for you real quick. Just because I explained it, but I did not show you where you had two different variables, and then I will let you do the other 5. Pause it, and I'll go through them. So let's look at 24, though, real quick. Excuse me. I have a negative a, so negative assumed 1a, and I'm just going to write them separately, because, again, we cannot mix our Play-Dohs, and you can think of other ideas or analogies for that, but I just think it's wrong to mix Play-Doh. So negative a is negative 1a, negative 5b, we have plus 4b, plus negative 11b. 2 is a constant. I'm going to circle it, but right now I'm worried about my variables, and I have plus, I don't know why I wrote comma, plus negative 3a. So I have a negative 1 plus a negative 3 is going to give me negative 4a. And this is just my thinking space, so we know that that's not part of our answer. Negative 4a plus, well, I have a negative 5 and a 4b. Let me just double check I'm not losing signs, because when I moved it, it was spotty the way I wrote it. All right, so negative 5 and positive 4. Well, positive and negative subtract to keep the bigger sign. So 5 minus 4 is 1. Negative 5 is bigger. So we're going to be left with negative 1. And then negative 1 plus negative 11b. Because minus plus a negative. So plus negative b. So our negative 1 and negative 11 give us negative 12b. I'm going to put that up there because that's all one answer. So negative 4a plus negative 12b. And 2 is our only constant. So we're going to put plus, not lose our b, 2. And that is as far as we can go with it. We can combine all our a's. We can combine our b's. We can combine our constants, but we don't know what a is. We don't know what b is. And there are no other constants. So we cannot combine any of those 3 terms because they are not like terms. All right, I want you to go ahead now. Pause this. Do 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23. I'm going to give you a second to go ahead and pause this. All right, by now you should have paused this, and now you're unpausing it to check your work. If you didn't, because you're still just sitting here listening to me, pause it now. Work on it. All right, so now by now you should be unpausing to check your work. All right, so on 19 you have 14w, you have 2w, you have 10w, and remember that's negative. So negative 14 and positive 10, positive subtract to keep the bigger sign. Negative 14 and positive 10 gives me 14 minus 10 is 4. Negative 14 is bigger, so we're going to say that's negative 4 and a negative 4 and a positive 2 Again, positive, negative, subtract, keep the bigger sign. 4 minus 2 is 2, and negative 4 is bigger. So you should have got negative 2w and negative 11, because again, also negative, is the only constant. So you got negative 2w plus 11. If you didn't, check your sign rules. That was one of the biggest issues I see with you guys, is that you're not following those sign rules. 14w, positive 10, negative and positive. Subtract, keep the bigger sign. So negative 12 plus 2w. Again, negative, positive. Subtract and keep the bigger sign. 12 minus 2 is 10. And 12 is, what did I, oh, scratch that. Negative 4 is 4. I said it right the first time. I don't know what I was thinking. Negative 14 and positive 10 is 4. Negative 14 is bigger. Negative 4 and positive 2. Again, negative, positive. Subtract and keep the bigger sign. It's like if I owed you $4, but then I give you 2, I still owe you $2. So pay attention to those integer rules. I'm assuming if you got it wrong, that's what you did. If that's not what you did, circle it, bring it to our small group, and we'll figure out what you did so we can fix any issues. I'm going to go ahead and say plus a negative, plus a negative, plus a negative. I have r's. So I have a negative 5r, and I have plus 13r. I have negative 1 plus negative 6. So we're going to combine those to make one combined expression. So negative 5 and positive 13. Don't lose your r, because otherwise you're going to think it's a constant and combine the wrong things. Negative 5 and positive 13. Again, negative, positive. Subtract and keep the sign of the larger absolute value. 13 minus 5 is 8. 13 is bigger, so it's positive 8r. Negative 1 and negative 6. I spent $1. I spent 6 more. I lost $7 in all. Did you get that one right? If not, was it a sign issue? If those first two were sign issues, why don't you go back and pause again and check these last 3? All right. I have a positive 10 and a negative 1, because plus a negative, plus a negative. So we have 10 plus negative 1. Those are our constants. We have a 4h as a constant and a negative 8h. And those are the same variable, so we can combine those. Positive, negative. So we're going to be left with 9, because 10 minus 1 is 9. Positive 10 is larger, so we're going to leave it as positive 9. And then, again, I have a positive and a negative. 8 minus 4 is 4. Negative 8 is bigger, so plus negative 4h. Did you get that one right? Was it because you went back and fixed your signs? Awesome. If not, again, circle star. We'll figure out what you did wrong in class. All right, so I have negative 7x. I have positive x, and we know there's an assumed 1 there. And I have positive 6x. So negative 7x plus 1x plus 6x. And then we have plus a negative, negative 12 plus a negative, plus negative 9. So, negative 7 and positive 1. I owe you $7. I give you 1. Now I owe you $6. And then negative 6 and positive 6 is going to give me nothing. So we'd have 0x, and anything times 0 is 0. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to drop that. If you put 0x, that is the last thing you would have to do. Just drop that 0x, because anything times 0 is 0. So those are all gone. They've canceled each other out. And then I have negative 12 plus negative 9. So negative and a negative I have to make it a bigger negative. So we're going to be left with negative 21. So again, let's check through it. Negative 7, positive 1, so negative 6, plus 6 cancels this out to 0. And then we're left with negative 12 and negative 9 give us negative 21. And then the last one, if you got that wrong, was it because they canceled out? Did that throw you off? Do you see what we did? If not, circle it, star it. I'll show you a couple more problems like that in our guided practice. We'll get everything settled. Let's do this last one. I have negative 8x. I have 23x. And then I have y's. If you combined all those, I want you to pause this and rework it where you only combine your x's and your y's. So I have negative 2y plus a negative, and I have plus negative 6y. And again, we can only combine our x's and our y's. I have negative 8x, and I have plus 23x. Again, remember, you're going to have a ugly brown Play-Doh by the end if you're mixing all your Play-Dohs together. All right, so I have negative 2y plus negative 6y. So 2 negatives going to make a bigger negative, so I have negative 8y. And then I have negative 8x and positive 2x. So positive and negative, subtract to keep the bigger sign. So 8 minus 2 is 6. Negative 8 is bigger, so plus negative 6x. All right. So that is the end of today's lesson. So we know that our parts of an expression or variable is a letter that takes the place of a number when we do not know what that number is. That's our variable. Our variable term is the whole term with the variable and the coefficient attached. So, for example, 14x, the variable with the coefficient attached is your variable term, and they are separated by pluses and minuses. I think I said it once. It wasn't directly said in the notes, but we do know those terms are separated by pluses and minuses. So our variable term has the variable as well as the coefficient, and that coefficient is the number attached to our variable. We can only combine terms that have the same variable, because if you mix red Play-Doh and blue Play-Doh, you're going to get purple Play-Doh, and if you keep throwing colors in, you're going to get the ugly Play-Doh that my kids have made. I think it's gray. It's probably gray. It might be brown. Not sure. But, so we can only combine our terms that are the same. Otherwise, you're going to get oddly colored Play-Doh. And then our constants are those numbers that have no variables attached. So they're just your regular old numbers. And you can only combine those variable terms that have the same one. All right. If you nailed this, think you're ready to go ahead and do that Schoology work. If you're still having some issues, you circled starred things on today's practice, bring that to class. You still just want to have some practice, come to class. All right, guys. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.